is going on, everyone? Welcome to another very exciting episode right here on the MIgardener channel. I'm really excited about today's episode because we're going to be talking about one of the easiest tropical plants to grow and something that is really cool that you probably haven't seen before, so I'm excited to be talking about it and doing a growing guide on it, and that is the curry tree. Believe it or not, the curry tree is where curry gets its name. In India, these are grown, these are native to India. These are grown for their leaves, and the leaves are used as an herb. They're used fresh and dried, but they're a whole lot better when they're fresh, and they're used in curries. And so if you've ever had a green curry, the curry paste or curry powder, or if you go to a real legit place, they use curry leaves, the whole leaves themselves. That is what gives curry its signature color and flavor. And I personally love curry. I love Indian food. I'm an absolute sucker for it. So when I saw this, I had to have it in my collection. And I really love it because it does not need to reach full maturity. This is not only one of the easiest plants in our collection to grow, but it's also one of the most beneficial in terms of food production, because when you're growing avocados or chocolate or coffee or oranges, you don't always get fruit. And when you do, sometimes the labor and your inputs sometimes don't really justify growing it, other than maybe for just pleasure or hobby. This, however, is not the case. This tree will grow very easily, and you don't need to reach full maturity because you're harvesting it for its leaves. So you don't need to wait till you harvest. You don't need to get old enough where it would fruit, because you can quite literally take leaves as soon as you're ready to, as long as you don't harvest so many that you hamper the growth. That's really the only way you're going to really damage it significantly. So I love it for that respect. And so we're going to talk about how to grow it today, because I think all of you should be growing it as well. I know a lot of people don't like curry. I personally love it, like I said, and I think when you have it properly done and it's not greasy and it's just really well ratioed with vegetables and the curry sauce, it personally is one of the most simple yet satisfying dishes out there. So give it a shot. Give it a shot. I really encourage you to try it. So first I want to talk about soil, because soil is something you do not need to worry about, but something we always talk about first. When it comes to soil for growing the curry tree, you want to just make sure that you have a very well draining mix. Obviously, curry trees grow in a wide variety of climates, which is so nice because it makes it very easy. It's well adapted to many different soil conditions, and so basically, I like to say I might as well not torture it by throwing it in the worst soil. Even though you probably could, it would still survive. That's how hardy these things are. I like to give it just a really well draining mix, so there's no risk of root rot or any soil-borne funguses or diseases and things like that. So I just throw it in a regular potting mix. When it comes to growing the curry tree, you just have to water it a little more frequently, because it's not really a tropical plant. But where it's grown in India, they'll get pretty much 2 seasons. So you get the wet season and then you get the dry season. And I like to always kind of, whenever I'm growing something, I do some research on where it's grown and the climates that it's grown in. And so you get about half the year where we won't really water this at all. We'll pretty much just water it to keep it alive. And then during the next part of the season, which would be like the wet season, after about 6 months, we'll kick it into its wet season months, which kind of encourages more growth. It kind of just kicks it into high gear, and that's when we would water it about once a week. And the next thing that I want to talk about is fertilizing, because fertilizing could not be easier when it comes to this tree. When it comes to fertilizing, just make sure you have an all-purpose fertilizer. I say this a lot, and it might get old, but it's the truth. We just use Trifecta Plus. But honestly, when it comes to the curry tree, any well-balanced fertilizer will work. You could even use something like worm castings, because again, these are trees, and that's what I want to stress about this curry tree is everyone always says, you recommend the same fertilizer for so much stuff. When it comes to trees and fruiting stuff, particularly, they usually use a lot of nitrogen. But when it comes to not really cultivated trees, I should say, like oak trees, maple trees, what have you, this is quite literally the equivalent of like a maple tree in India. These grow everywhere. And so they're very well adapted to not needing a whole lot of nutrients. Whereas take, an avocado, for instance, these have been cultivated to produce huge fruits that would normally not be produced wild that large. So you have to give them a little extra something to kind of get them going. Whereas with the curry tree, it's pretty much just like, well, it's pretty much just like, I just need to stay alive. So that's why we're giving it just a pretty basic all-purpose fertilizer, Trifecta Plus, and we should be fine. So use what you have on hand. Don't spend a whole ton on fertilizer for this tree, and you should be fine. The next thing I want to talk about is temperature and sunlight, because those are two things that are obviously important when it comes to growing a tree. But the nice thing when it comes to growing a curry plant is that you don't need a ton of temperature. These grow in a wide variety of conditions, and so I typically say just keep them somewhere above 50 degrees and then somewhere below about 100 degrees. In India, you have a wide variety of growing zones, from very tropical to kind of semi-desert to desert, and so there's a whole lot of areas that this tree can be found growing. There's even mountainous regions as well. So it's honestly something where you're going to be fine by just kind of keeping it a pretty standard room temperature, but it's definitely not frost tolerant, so don't leave it outside. And when it comes to when it comes to the sunlight, I always just pretty much say give it full sun. There's really nothing more to say about it because it's a tree. It's not going to do well in shade, so make sure it gets about 5 to 7 hours of sun. We throw it underneath these lights. They get about 12 hours. I think the lights stay on for 16 hours, sorry. So that's about 12 hours equivalent of sunlight. So really, as much sunlight as you can give them, the better they're going to be. And also, obviously, since you're harvesting it for its leaves, you're going to get a lot more leaf production. You're going to get a lot more leaf production when you have it underneath lights or sun longer. And then the very final thing I want to talk about is when it comes to pruning and harvesting, because obviously that's what you're growing it for. What really makes this tree super convenient is it does not matter if you harvest the top growing point or not, because it'll produce side shoots very easily. And also, when you're harvesting its leaves, just make sure you harvest the lower leaves first. That's usually the best way to keep this tree growing in an upward motion, kind of an upward path, is by harvesting the lower leaves. The thing you don't want to do is discourage that upward growth by harvesting these new leaves. Plus, the newer leaves will have a lot less curry flavor in them, and so the darker leaves and the more mature leaves are usually what's preferred. So that's all there is to growing curry. It's really not that difficult, and I really hope that you'll try this. Like I said, it's an exotic one, it's a fun one, and it's certainly something you cannot go wrong with if you really enjoy eating curry like we do. We benefit from it greatly. So love having it in the collection, and I'm glad you decided to tune in for this exotic plant. Make sure to like this video if you did like it. It really helps to spread this video around to other people that would probably like to grow the curry tree. And as always, this is Luke from the MIgardener channel, reminding you to grow big or go home. Grow a curry tree. You'll appreciate it. I will catch you all later. See ya. Bye.